Hi guys, Andy with the Exit Advisor here. I help people buy and sell plant hire companies. Here are 5 things that an acquirer should be thinking about during the acquisition process. So number 1, which is really the most important one for me, and that goes for both buyers and sellers, but no deal is better than a bad deal. Sunk cost fallacy is real. Imagine you've gone down the route of looking for a business. It's taken you 3 or 4 months. You've now entered into due diligence. You've got costs piling up from the lawyer's side, but the more due diligence that you perform and the more you negotiate with the seller, the more red flags start to appear. So information is taking time to get to you. There are things that the seller isn't prepared to concede on as you're negotiating that you consider fairly insignificant. All of these things are compounding. And all you're thinking about is, well, I don't want to pull out now because I've spent so much money, I might as well carry on with it. That is just not the attitude to have. No deal is better than a bad deal. You do not want to have completed and put, possibly a house on the line with PGs for a bad deal. Take your time, zoom out, assess it, speak with your broker. Is this right for you? It might be that it's just a couple of blips and we can get over it, but ultimately, if the seller isn't performing in the way that you think that they should be, and his legal team are difficult, and that you're not getting the information you want, it might be time to call it a day. No deal is always better than a bad deal. Number 2 is spend some time in the business. I don't see enough people doing this. It's the place where you're going to learn the most about the company, how the people are interacting with each other, how they're interacting with customers. Are processes that you're looking at in the due diligence process, are they being followed? Are they actually live, or are they just AI generated documents that someone's stuck into the data room to tick a box? It's really important to see how the business performs, and I just don't think enough people do it. You're so engrossed in negotiating small details of an SPA or a buying agreement, and going through the data room checking that legal contracts and financials and stuff are what they say they are, but really that you're going to find the most amount of information about the business by spending time in the business. So do that as much as you can, and a good seller isn't going to behave in a way that restricts that. And again, as I sort of harp on about all the time, communication is key, and a good seller will be relatively transparent with you as much as their lawyer will allow them. But yeah, spend some time in the business. Don't be afraid to do that. Number 3 comes down to the relationship that you're building with the buyer, with the seller, and that is trust but verify. So if a seller tells you something, this machine is in good order, then great, trust them, but also make sure that you're doing your due diligence and checking for certificates of conformity and annual service records and Lola inspections if it needs it, etc., etc. So trust but verify. Number 4 is a really good one, and it's mystery shopping. As you get towards the sort of end of the transaction, don't be afraid to get some people to phone up and ask some questions or put some orders in and see how the hire desk are performing. Are they generally helpful? Are they rude? This is kind of a snapshot of how they treat their customers, and it's a really good way to get behind the scenes and get an unfiltered look at how they really behave. Number 5 is probably my top tip, which is keep cash on the balance sheet. Keep something behind after the transaction in case of any unknowns that haven't come up in due diligence. There is always something that you haven't thought about that happens post completion, and it's important to have enough cash to make sure that you can deal with that. Due diligence, someone like me who's going to help you through the due diligence process means that you should be covered, but ultimately there are things that happen that are just outside of anyone's control, and it's important to not have maxed yourself out to buy a business and then you need a 20 grand bill paid in the first month. So keep some cash on the balance sheet. Thanks for watching, guys.